Hello, welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket with me, Simon Hughes.
And I'm Simon Mann.
Simon, it's the 23rd of April tomorrow. We're recording this on the 22nd. Do you know what important date that signatures?
Let me think. Was it the day that Bristol
I knew
City
it would be something.
confirmed their promotion to the old First Division back in 1976? Was that the 23rd of
You're
April?
obsessed by Bristol, aren't you?
Bristol
I mean-
City. Bristol's a rugby club. Yours.
Sorry. Okay, you're obsessed by Bristol City. And you think that that was the date they got promoted?
Hold on, let me just have a look. Let me just have a quick look. I can just look this up now. Oh, no. They actually got promoted on the 20th of April when they beat Portsmouth at home with a goal from Clive Whitehead. Actually, the 23rd was the eve of their final game against Notts County when they could have won the title, but they actually lost the game. It didn't matter because I think they spent the whole week celebrating.
Is this why you got interested in Bristol City? Was this your first sort of interaction with the club then, really?
No, I've been following them since about 1970. So
Okay.
yeah, no, it was a road that, well, it wasn't that long because actually, within 6 years they went from the second tier to the first tier of English football. So into the first division, which of course is now kind of like the second division, and there's the Premier League. Anyway, are we going to talk? Last week we started talking about golf, didn't we? To start with,
What a prisoner of fortune you are.
last week we started talking about golf. This week we started talking about football. So the 23rd of April, yours. What is the 23rd of April?
Well, St George's Day, obviously, but actually, more interestingly, it's also the anniversary, the 20th anniversary of the first ever YouTube video, which was uploaded on the 23rd of April, 2005. It was called Me at the Zoo by Jawed Karim, who was one of the founders of YouTube. And the first sort of integrations of video upload were enabled on the 23rd of April, 2005. So it's a 20-year anniversary of YouTube. And the reason I thought that was quite interesting was, I mean, obviously the way it's changed the world in the same way as the iPhone has, but also it has a connection with cricket because so much of county cricket is now uploaded on YouTube and freely available to all. And it's also, because of that, created controversy because of the fact that you can now see some of the incidents or all of the incidents, not necessarily in the finest clarity, and we'll come to that, but you can watch YouTube today and see the incident we're going to talk about, isn't it? Which was that disputed catch, Jamie Porter, Ethan Brooks was caught and bowled, Worcestershire all-rounder, and that gave Essex a narrow victory. But it does look, from some angles, as if the ball may have bounced as Jamie Porter caught the ball. What was your take on it?
Well, you talk about YouTube. Actually, I've gone back. I saw it yesterday. I've gone back and I watched it again about 5 or 6 times, over and over again. My feeling is I'm not 100% sure because the clarity is not great. What I think could have happened, though, is that as Porter fell forward, the ball did hit the end of his fingers and go up into the palm of his hand. And that often gives the illusion, when you're watching from, without lots of camera angles, it often gives the illusion that it's bounced because it looks as if it goes down and then comes up. Whereas, of course, you can get the end of your fingers underneath the ball and then it goes up into your palm. And I think that's what could have happened with his left hand as he fell forward. We will never know, I don't think. I don't think it'll ever be proved conclusively one way or the other. The point umpire, I think it was Steve O'Shaughnessy, confirmed it was out, although he was out of shot, so you didn't see the umpire raising his finger. But it led to an extraordinary scene at the end, didn't it, where you kind of had the bowler and the batter kind of pointing at each other, sort of half accusing each other, and it de-escalated quite quickly, presumably with the umpire's intervention, you're actually giving it out and saying, yeah, I think that carried, and it just calmed everything down, and they all shook hands. Jamie Porter afterwards saying, I would never claim a catch that I didn't think was out. I think that one of the points is, of course, is as a fielder, bowler, whatever, you can think it's out, but it might not be out. So,
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, that is I was going to say that because Porter himself went up to the batsman and said, look, I caught it cleanly, go off, mate, you're out. There was slightly sort of cantankerous reactions initially, but in time, the batter did accept his verdict. But you don't always know if you've actually caught it cleanly. I mean, there are a number of times we've seen disputed catches on TV, where the fielder thought he caught it, and actually TV replays showed he didn't. Obviously, the quality of cameras is something that in professional top level international cricket now the cameras are better and you can see a bit more clearly. Although even in international games, sometimes it's not cut and dried. But I do think that, as you said, I do think at times you don't always know whether you've caught it cleanly or not. You think you have, but then the camera shows that a tiny bit of the ball touched the ground first. Actually, it's quite interesting because I mentioned YouTube at the start. So this podcast is now on YouTube as well. If you Google the Analyst, it'll come up as the Analyst Inside Cricket. We'll put the incident on YouTube as well, and you can sort of try and make a sense of it yourself. Of course, the problem is, and this is something I banged on around about now for a couple of years, is county cricket needs better quality cameras, and it slightly annoys me. I found a solution, some remote operated cameras, which we trialled at Hampshire last year, which are much sharper in picture and gave you more angles as well. So, in fact, when we were trialling the cameras at Hampshire, we did show that Mark Stoneman, who at that time was playing for Middlesex, was given out caught off the glove. And we were able to show in replays from two angles that actually the ball bounced off his arm. And he, understandably, he stormed off the field. But the trouble is there is no DRS in county cricket because the cameras are not good enough in most cases. In one or two counties cases, they are, because they spend a bit more money on it. But it's a shame that the ECB doesn't see the opportunity here for encouraging counties or helping counties, subsidising counties to have better cameras. And actually, there's two things that would create. One is the opportunity to look at these incidents in closer and clearer picture. And there was one last week, Johnny Bairstow, given out caught off the glove when actually clearly, and again, I froze the picture and it brushed his arm. And the other reason to have DRS in county cricket as well is it would give English players, I think, a head start in international circles, because at the moment there is no DRS in any domestic cricket. And therefore, when players go into international cricket for the first time, it's completely alien to them and they don't really know how to manage the system, both as a bowler or a batter or a wicketkeeper, say, who has to give the captain some advice. So I think it would be of huge benefit to English cricket to bring in better cameras. And I've found a cheap, affordable and manageable solution to this. But I think it would give English players coming into the international environment a head start in using DRS, as well as hoping to solve some of the controversies like we're talking about today.
Yeah, I mean, how many controversies are there during a game? I mean, there probably are actually quite a few, aren't there? I think the biggest one sometimes I see on replays of decisions in county cricket, the LBWs, you think, goodness me, that's not out. That was going down the leg side, or that was too high, or whatever, and the batter walks off disgruntled. You probably don't have these contentious low catches that often relative to the LBW shouts anyway, which of course that is one of the things. I mean, that dominates DRS in international cricket, isn't it? The LBW shouts largely. Okay, sometimes when the ball's spinning, the inside edge, the glove around the bat, the short leg, silly point catches. We've come quite a long way though, haven't we? In the sense that we can now see all the county matches, whereas before we couldn't. So at least there is that interaction between supporter and game.
The same argument that it came about when, say, Channel 4 introduced more technology into their coverage in the 99, 2000 sort of era. At first, this extra cameras and Hawkeye and stuff was only available to the TV viewer and to anyone kind of working on it on the game to show it to TV viewers. But that gradually over time, it was argued it was ridiculous for the TV viewer to have the benefit of this extra technology and clearer pictures and so on and better replays, and the players and the officials not having access to it. So over time, obviously DRS has come in, which makes a lot of sense, because otherwise you've got umpires blind, giving things out blind, and then suddenly everybody at home can see what a shocking mistake they made or whatever. So I think it's an inevitable bit of progress we'll see. It's just taking time to develop. And I think actually with the money that's coming into the county game from the 100 sale, the sale of the 100 franchises, I think we'll see in a year or two's time better quality of coverage, because you still get a lot of cameras with counted only say 3 cameras, and the ball the person who's operating the roving camera, if you like, the manned camera, not the fixed ones at either end, just trying desperately to catch up with the ball as it whistles to the boundary, and it does make for slightly sort of giddy feeling as you're watching it.
Yeah, I suppose in county cricket we are now at that stage, aren't they, where people can watch everything back, and a batter can go back and look at
Yeah.
his or her dismissal and say, well, that was going down the leg side. I got a real rough one there, or can you not see I got an inside edge on that, or whatever. I mean, actually, I was watching the Kent Gloucestershire game over the weekend, and Cam Green, who'd made 100 and then retired hurt, and then came back. He stood there for a long time after his LBW shout. I actually thought it looked out, but I mean, I don't know whether he hit it. His bat didn't look that close to the ball. Anyway, but you're right. It was hard to tell because of the quality of the camera. It was kind of inconclusive. It looked pretty straight. Yeah, I could see why the umpire gave it out, but there might have been something that mitigated against it being out. It's always that constant strive for improvement, perfection, isn't it? And it still creates lots of debate. I mean, we had it in the Ashes, didn't we? That Mitchell Stark catch at Lords, for example, the Johnny Bairstow incident. You can play these things over and over again, and people see it in different ways. Although I happen to think that the Stark one was definitely not out. We had quite an interesting conversation with Glenn McGrath the following morning. We had the guy who's in charge of the laws, the MCC, Fraser Stewart, came down and did an interview with Glenn there, saying, "Look, Glenn, this is the law," and he was saying, "That can't be right, that can't be right," but it is in the law. So, yeah, do the players need it? Yours is. I mean, when you were playing,
Yes.
did you just accept a field saying, yeah, that was out, or LBW decisions? Do you just say, oh, well, that one went against me, tomorrow it might go for me, or was there a lot?
No, I don't think people reacted like that at all. I mean, they came off absolutely
Threw
furious.
their bats across the dressing room?
Yes, I
Yeah,
mean there were
yeah,
certain players that were worse than others, but
yeah.
I mean some just sat and kind of thought about life for a while and were able to rise above it. Others absolutely apoplectic. In fact, Owen Morgan, John Embry tells a story about Owen Morgan, who came off. I think he got 98 in one of his early matches for Middlesex, and he was given out somehow. I don't know how exactly, but anyway, he stormed off and absolutely effing and blinding, walking through the committee room. Sorry, walking through the long room towards the dressing room at Lords, past the committee room door, and the committee. John Embry was coach, and he was in the committee room and heard this, screaming and shouting, Morgan, and went and had a word with him afterwards, quietly somewhere. And Morgan said he learnt a lot from that, and learn to kind of hold it all in and compose himself much better and be much less emotive about dismissals. And actually that helped his captaincy. So, I mean, everybody has that kind of scope, I suppose, to react badly. And the thing is with cricket, it's so terminal, isn't it? When you're dismissed, that's it. And if it's a one innings game, you're out. That's it. You can't contribute anything more to the match if you're batting in the second innings, and it's like a death, isn't it? And so you can understand people's pretty savage reaction to getting out, especially when they've had a raw one. I just remember actually Ryan Sidebottom getting given out off Murali in Candy. And it was clearly a terrible decision. We were covering it for BBC. I think you might have been there. We were covering it for BBC, and it was just the most terrible decision. And it hastened the end of the match. And of course, you had the classic 2005, and we're talking about 20-year anniversaries. 2005, Michael Kasparitz caught down the leg side at Edgbaston with 2 runs in between the teams, and it was only half an hour after when actually a technician in the truck where I was working pointed it out to me, and one of the editors said, "Yours looks like his hand is off the bat." And we then played that out half an hour later, and sure enough, his hand was off the bat, and he shouldn't have been given out. Anyway, so over time, DRS has cured many of these mistakes, and I think it does make it better for players because they haven't got so many arguments. They can't in international cricket, they it's there in colour, isn't it, that they were actually out, or, or Hawkeye says it or whatever. So I think it's kind of slightly muted players' wild reactions to being given out.
Oh, I think a lot. I mean, I think it's taken a lot. It seems to me to have taken quite a lot of dissent out of the game, doesn't it? And
Yes.
you don't see players standing there and
Well, like we did with Essex and Worcestershire, like we
yeah,
did with Ethan Brooks. He stood
yeah.
there almost sort of aghast at the decision, and like I'm not going out. You sympathise with him in that case because he played an incredible innings, didn't he? Got 80 odd runs batting at number 8 and got Worcester to within 20 odd of an unlikely target. 64, I think they put on for the last wicket, and his partner Duffy got none.
Mm.
Amazing.
Just held down that Worcestershire bottom of the table with I say 1 point. That's under my reconstituted championship table, which you might just come to in a moment. But Worcestershire not bottom of the table with 1 point. But it had 3 points for a win and 1 point for a draw and nothing for a defeat. Championship table, they would have
Hang on,
one
this is the
point.
cricket season now. It's the cricket, not the football
Well,
season.
well, what's the best points system for the county championship? I asked that because I was just as you do scrolling through social media, and I came across David Griffin, who's a Derbyshire devotee, he's their photographer and statistician and historian of Derbyshire, and he was putting forward an argument that that cricket or county championship should have a point scoring system like football, basically 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, nothing for a defeat. And his point is that all the things that happen within the game, like trying to get 250 within 110 overs, are quite artificial. And actually, when you start the game, you should just go out to win it, like you do in a Test match. I mean, there are no, bonus points in Test match cricket, which is kind of like, I suppose, what the county championship is preparing. Players for ultimately, or one of the things that they are doing. Of course, there's entertainment for members and supporters as well. That's another part of it. I actually looked at the Sheffield Shield and how they do their point scoring system, and they actually changed it because they used to have first innings points, which they don't have anymore. So about 10 years ago, they went to 6 points for a win, and then 0.01 of a point for every run you score after 200. So if you score 400, say, within 100 overs, you get 2 points. And you also get, for every wicket, you get 0.1 of a bonus point. So last season, for example, South Australia, they won the Sheffield Shield, and they ended up with 55.61 points. And the battle for second and third place, Queensland 39.76, Victoria 39.49. So it's kind of like a similar theme to the county championship, but you're rewarding incrementally. There was in the championship, there are these kind of slightly artificial targets, especially for runs, but they have adapted it, of course, haven't they, in recent years, because the targets have gone up in terms of the volume of runs you need to score within a certain number of overs. So you need 450 in 110 overs to get your full batting points, which is kind of encouraging attacking cricket. But lots of draws, Yoz, in the opening rounds of championship matches, and partly to do with the weather, partly to do with flat pitches. I'm just in a sort of microcosm looking at the Gloucestershire-Kent game, which I watched quite a bit of over the weekend. Gloucestershire's declaration was incredibly cautious. They set Kent in over 400 to win in about 40 overs. They probably thought they couldn't win the game. They were a bit unlucky in a way because they were in a potentially declaration setting up position on the third day, and it rained. It knocked out the final session, so it really set them back, and they were a bit cautious about the fact that Kent had charged down a big score against Middlesex in the previous game. They'd taken it down quite comfortably. So, yeah, you wonder whether the declaration would have been, I don't know, a bit more tempting if it had been 3 points for a win and 1 point for a draw. Where do you stand on bonus points and points for it? I mean, is it one of those things it's impossible to get right? I mean, there's a simplicity about football, but cricket is a very different sport, so you just have to do it in a different way.
Well, I think you do partly because of the time that players spend on the field. I mean, a 4-day game, is a real survival of the fittest, isn't it? As much as anything, and obviously talent and skill comes into it, but it's a long haul. And I think if you only win 3 points or winning a long, drawn out championship match, and you get only 1 point for a draw, if obviously it doesn't come to a positive conclusion over 4 days of effort, I think that's not enough reward for what you've put in. And also, it leaves you slightly the hostage to the weather, say. You might have played a fantastic match and be dominant and, about to win by an innings or something. And then the weather ruins it on that last afternoon. And so you end up with 1 point. At least with bonus points, you get something else for your efforts. And I think it is different because, football is just all action for 90 minutes or 97 minutes or whatever it is now, whenever they add so much time on. Whereas, county cricket is 4 days, 96 overs a day. There's a lot of kind of thought and energy and, skill obviously expended in that. And I think you need some kind of reward for that, as well as an incentive for winning. And I quite like the Sheffield Shield method because, as you say, some of the targets for bonus points in county cricket are a bit arbitrary. And to make it like every time you get a run over 200, you get an extra point. I'm just thinking about that silly story actually, sort of related to earnings for scoring over 100 or over 200. Do you remember that Dennis Compton, the famous Middlesex and England cricketer? He got the chance to play in the Ranji Trophy. It was actually during the war. In fact, it was during the Second World War, and obviously there was no cricket going on. And he took the chance to go and play in India in the Ranji Trophy. And his team, Holker, got to the final. And the chap who was their sort of sponsor, this rich merchant, said, "Mr. Compton, I'm so delighted that we've got to the final. Every run you score after 100, I'll give you 100 rupees." Right? So Compton went into bat, and at number 4, I think it was 16 for 2 when he went into bat, and he eventually made 254. So he was last man out, walked off the field, came into the dressing room, and as he was walking off the field in Mumbai, actually, he was calculating in his head how much money the man would give him, and he got to his seat, his dressing room seat, and there was just a note on his chair, and it said, "Well batted, Mr. Compton. Very sorry. Called away on urgent business." So he never got his money. But anyway, I mean, silly story. But it's sort of, I like the fact that you can get incremental gains from, 10 runs over 200 or so. So I like that Sheffield Shield bonus point system. But I still think you need a proper reward for winning the game, which we have in county cricket.
Yeah, I can see the argument for bonus points. The one you set out actually as being a good one, that it can reflect the game, that if you do dominate and you do control a match, that if you both only get 1 point. But I suppose in a test series, I mean, England had Sri Lanka 9 down, didn't they, in a test series in 2014? They dominated the game, and at the end of the game, it was kind of like 1 point all, wasn't it? It was all still 0-0 in the test series, and then Sri Lanka went to Old Trafford. They won off the penultimate ball of the match and took the series. And I think
that is the simplicity. The simplicity of Test cricket is its beauty in a way. You're right, but then that is either a 3 or a 5 match series. We're talking county championship, which is a long campaign throughout the whole summer. Yeah. So I just sort of think you would get a bit of a raw deal if you're a team that kept scoring lots of runs and not actually getting wins and not getting any benefit for the runs you score. I guess you could say, well, you haven't got good enough bowlers to bowl teams out, or you're batting on too long. It's your fault. I mean, from the outset what the rules are and how to exploit them. But I just think you are too much of a hostage to fortune. And obviously we've got this vexed issue of bad light again, where umpires decide to go off the field and set the benchmark for the light. And we've had it again in this round of games. I've seen pictures of grounds with blue sky in the background. The floodlights are on. It's mid-afternoon, no play. I mean, just insane. And it is a bit of a lottery. So I do think you need a bit more benefit to the efforts and skills that you put in over the period of the 4 days.
Yeah, I can see that as a reasonable argument, despite the sort of artificiality around the bonus points, because it doesn't actually. You do have that game within a game, don't you? A team looking to score 400 to get that extra bonus point. I don't know. They might bat on more than they need to possibly, but you weigh that up in the final equation, the sort of times run equation. How long have we got to win this match? There's probably no absolutely perfect situation, and but we have had a lot of draws in the opening 3 rounds of matches. In this one, largely because I think the weather intervened at inconvenient times. Rain at the back end of a game inevitably is going to lead to more draws, isn't it? It'd rain earlier in the game, you can then try and move the game on a bit quicker later in the match if you've got that available to you. Well, that didn't really happen in this round of matches. Mind you, there were some pretty flat pitches around, like that one down at Hove where Ollie Pope made a welcome 100. Dan Lawrence making 100 as well. Tom Haynes, 449 runs, leading run scorer in the county championship. I think all the bowlers were happy to say goodbye to Hove. Was Hove a happy hunting ground for you, Yoz?
Yes, it was. Oh, yeah. I mean, I love bowling there because they always used to say, actually, when the tide was in, it would move around more.
Is that rubbish or not?
Yeah, total rubbish. But it actually did do more in the evening, I reckon. Perhaps just when the clouds came down, or when it was a bit cooler, and obviously sometimes you got quite a good breeze at Hove as well from off the sea. So the bottom end, the sea end, was the end to bowl. If you were lucky enough to get it, obviously the quick bowlers liked. In a way, actually, it was a good ground to play at because some bowlers like running down the hill, fast bowlers, and that was from the far end, the non-sea end. So you often got your spearhead, your overseas fast bowler got that coming down the hill. But actually, instead of at Lords where you'd have to bowl into the wind from the nursery end, you actually bowled with the wind from the sea end at Hove. And so you could get benefit from both ends in a way. And it just had great carry, a good bounce. I mean, not like now where it looks really placid. It really went through beautifully. It was like glass in the middle of the season. The ball skidded off. I mean, it wasn't a nice prospect to bat on because you had Imran Khan at one end and the very aggressive, hostile South African Garth LaRue at the other, both egging each other on to bowl quicker and try and hit people on the head and all that. And the worst thing of all was the wicket is side on. The pavilion, the dressing room was a side on to the ground. So you were at deep cover or deep mid wicket. And everything looked so much faster. I remember seeing Ian Gould taking balls from Imran Khan. It looked like he was halfway to the boundary. And so when you're side onto the pitch, you just find that whole prospect terrifying. But to go in with the keeper that far back. Anyway, lovely ground. Well done to Sussex, who have punched above their weight so far in the championship. There's a second from top with Notts, and they're playing Notts in the next round of games at Trent Bridge. So well done to them. Listen, we'll take a quick break. And as I mentioned, YouTube, there is actually quite a nice video of Angus Fraser, Derek Pringle, and I riffing about the hardships of fast bowling. Which we recorded.
A violin in the background as well.
The other day. There's lots of sort of strange sounds going on in the background. I mean, it's a nice conversation actually, talking about the hardship in the olden days when the footwear was so bad and we didn't have drinks breaks and we didn't have any kind of nutrition and we just troughed huge lunches and then had to try and bowl after lunch and so on. So that's on YouTube as well. And I'm going to write a piece today about this whole kind of cameras and YouTube and DRS idea for county cricket. That's going to be on the Crickverse blog site, CRICVERSE. So you can catch that sort of piece on there if you Google the Crickverse. And we'll be back after the break to talk more about the personalities who've been doing well in county cricket this last weekend.
Yeah, just a quick minute's silence for all those old bowlers who had to bowl in those horrible boots without any food, and they had to bowl 200 overs before breakfast every day. Okay, as we talk quite generally about the championship, one or two cricket themes, what about some of the specific performances? We should touch on our 5 to follow as well. Should we start there with Zach Crawley, who strike rate of 48 yesterday. 48 for Zach Crawley and a half century unbeaten against Gloucestershire to help them save the game. He was nicked off in the first innings. Actually, it was a rebound catch from first slip to James Bracey reacted really quickly to take the catch. But another low score for Zach Crawley on what was a pretty flat pitch, although it was some low bounce towards the end of the game. But Crawley 54 not out from 112 balls. He batted for nearly 3 hours. Might have done him some good, that, don't you think?
No, I mean, definitely, it's what you needed, isn't it? Just forget about the runs, just stay in and just play and get your kind of feet moving. And that's the problem with him, the foot movement, because I saw in that first innings, and we talked about this on the last podcast, actually, about the lack of movement that tall batsmen are often guilty of, McKinney being one and Crawley another, just not using their assets, which are their stride, their potential stride to the ball. And the wicket, his dismissal in the first innings of that match the other day you're talking about, Tom Price, the seamer from Gloucester, bowled a good ball just outside off stump. It probably left him a touch, so obviously, as the new ball will. But Crawley was very slow to get forward to the ball. And really, as he edged it, I froze the picture. His left knee was not totally rigid, but it was not very bent, and his weight wasn't going into the shot. He then pushed out with his bat in front of his pad, which caused the ball to carry to slip. And he'd just be so much better off making a better stride to the ball and then playing it under his nose more, and then perhaps playing it with softer hands as well. Obviously, the hard hands part of his batting is partly his asset. It enables him to hit the ball on the up and hit powerfully off the front foot or off at least a fullish delivery. But it's a disadvantage when he's playing the moving ball. And that's why he gets out so often, because he doesn't move his front foot very much and either leaves a gap between bat and pad or ends up pushing out in front of his pad with his bat, and that causes edges to carry. This one, he was perhaps a bit unlucky that he was out because, as you say, Cameron Green sort of managed to drop it or throw it in the air, and Bracey reacted well and caught it. But it was a poor shot, really. And he's guilty of that too often. Maybe in the second innings he got his feet moving a bit more, but to me that's what he needs to do. I don't know if he'll ever conquer that slight flaw or not. It's one of those things as a batter, you have to decide whether you want to stick or twist. Do you stick with what you know and what has helped you in the past and given you a lot of success, or do you twist and decide I need to adapt my technique and then I can be even more productive? It might be a backward step, but it could be worth trying. And that's always the dilemma that batsmen face.
Yeah, England openers of the past have been making hundreds in this season's county championship. Alex Lee's got one, Hamid got one, Dom Sibley has been scoring them in the county championship this season. An England opener of the future getting one for Leicestershire, Rayhan Ahmed, up the top of the order and scoring 100, which is a huge boost to him, isn't it? Actually, I noticed he only bowled, Old Trafford, he only bowled 4 overs in the match, didn't bowl in the first innings at all. Imagine, Shane Warne not bowling in the first innings that lasted, what was it? It was quite a long time, actually. 96 overs that Lancashire first innings lasted. Do you imagine Shane Warne not bowling? Anyway, he didn't bowl in the first innings, bowled 4 overs in the second, but he opened the batting and made 100. So he's one of your players to follow. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, we saw him bumped up the order playing for England in his first Test match. Came in as a kind of like a pinch hitter at number 3. I mean, he's clearly got some talent, and it's actually quite good to see him, I think, putting him up the order and giving him an opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I think he could be a genuine number 6 or 7 in Test cricket in the future. He could be like a Chris Wokes or someone, who comes in and plays a really important innings. I think you do want his bowling to develop, though, because leg spin is such a valuable art, and he has got some talent. He's only taken a 5 in a Test match. He has definitely got some talent, but he just needs to work on his consistency. And I think he could be a really valuable cricketer for England to show that he's got the aptitude to make hundreds in county cricket, opening the batting as well, and a decent bowling attack he was facing as well. There was some decent bowlers in that side, so the side he was playing against. So, I think it's encouraging, actually. And I think perhaps actually making runs will take the pressure off his bowling as well, and in a way make him free him up, because if you're only a leg spinner, if you're a Mason Crane, say, and you're only playing as a spinner, a Bashir, you have to keep performing with the ball. But if you're a guy who can contribute importantly with the bat as well, it means you have more to offer the team if your bowling isn't going so well.
Yeah, and probably if you're opening the batting or given a chance to open the batting, bumped up the order, you're taking more responsibility. I think one of the things I noticed about his sort of cameos for England is that they've been, incredibly aggressive, kind of like flirty innings. There's no, you kind of feel you're better than that. You can make much more of this. Just give yourself a little bit of time. It doesn't have to be a shot or ball. Anyway, interesting one to watch. 100 off 149 balls with 14 fours against a Lancashire attack that included Saqib Mahmood and John Turner, and actually Tom Hartley, who got him out in the end. 2 for 151 from 44 overs from Tom Hartley. My 5 to follow, you can do your 5 to follow. Rehan was one of them. You do your other 4. So actually, they almost did nothing in this round of county championship matches. My 5 to follow, and not least because 2 of them didn't play. So Sam Cook rested. England's volition, apparently. So that indicates that there's a good chance he's going to be in the squad for the first test of the summer against Zimbabwe, and possibly in the squad against India as well. Sonny Baker, he didn't play as well. I presume he was rested by Hampshire. So James Rew made naught for Somerset, didn't bat in the second innings. Bashir took no wickets, 0 for 80 odd in 20 overs. Kind of like the sort of spell we've become used to from Shoaib recently. And then the other one was McKinney. And you talked earlier, didn't you, about if you get a rough decision, you have to storm off the pitch. And well, you don't have to storm off the pitch, but some players do, and they throw their bat and they have to sit there and watch other people scoring their runs. Well, McKinney got quite a good ball actually from George Hill from round the wicket, just left him a bit, and it was a slightly indeterminate shot, and he nicked it to slip. So he was out for 6, and then he had to sit there and watch 2 players, Lees and Emilio Gay, put on 279 for the second wicket, and that's cricket, isn't it? Some days, I mean, the previous match, he was scoring big. Well, everyone else had to sit and watch him, but this time he had to sit and watch everybody else score runs on another flattish pitch in which Johnny Bairstow made 80 odd in the second innings. So those are my 5 to follow. I've nipped through those. They barely did anything in this round of matches. And just to emphasise again that we're not saying these players are going to flourish this season, but they're just interesting players to watch to see how they get on and how they develop. What about the other 4, Yoz? You mentioned Rehan Ahmed with his 100.
Yes, well, I mean, none of mine did an awful lot either, actually. Alex Davis, Warwickshire, opening batter, captain. He made 2 and 5 in that match against Notts. Vaughan, Michael's son, slightly better with the bat for Somerset, 23 and 29 in that match. And it didn't bowl actually, but at least got a couple of 20s, so he's got going a little bit now. Jack Carson didn't do much in the game at Hove against Surrey. Bowled a few overs, didn't do much with the bat, so a bit of a kind of fresh air for him. And Josh Tongue, 2 wickets actually for Notts against Warwickshire in the second innings, none in the first. So nothing to write home about really by any of those players, apart from Rehan Ahmed with his ton for Leicester.
So should we pick 5 others to follow?
5 others.
Well, it's the nature of the game, isn't it? It's, your ups and your downs.
We should have picked John Simpson because he's amazing. He moved from Middlesex, and he was Middlesex's leading run scorer last year, made 1,000 runs, moved down to Sussex to stay in the first division, wicket-keeper batsman, and he's one of the leading run scorers in the country again this year. And he bats at 6. He probably should bat higher, but because he's keeper, I suppose, he goes in at 6. But he's a hell of a talent. Talking of wicket-keeper batsmen, we should just mention Joss Butler's performances in the IPL, shouldn't we? Who seems to have regained his sort of freedom that he had. I mean, he felt at times he looked a bit constipated as captain of England's white ball teams and didn't quite flourish. I mean, we set very high standards. He set a very high bar, Josh Butler, hasn't he, really? And so at times, even when he got a 40 or something for England, you sort of felt he wasn't quite his free old self. but he certainly is now. And playing for Gujarat Titans, made a brilliant 97 not out in a run chase, 204 they chased his team to get to the top of the table in the IPL, and then he got another brisk 45 the other day. And I just noticed actually he took Mitchell Stark apart in one match when Stark was bowling at the death, and he was bowling wide Yorkers, and he was actually bowling well. And Stark has had fantastic IPL. He won a super over against the Rajasthan Royals, and has bowled. I think he defended 10 to win off the last over in that match, and then won the super over as well. And he was bowling these superb wide Yorkers, sort of spearing wider to Butler, and Butler was fashioning them for four, slicing them and cuffing them through backward point. Just to illustrate how difficult he is to bowl at, he was scoring even off the perfect Yorkers. So he looks back to his best.
Yeah, Stark went around the park in that match, but you're right, he was brilliant in that game against Rajasthan Royals. It seems to me, I don't know, it's sort of like a hunch. I mean, I haven't watched it all, but the Yorker has come back into fashion a bit more in this season's IPL. And people say, well, why wouldn't you bowl a Yorker? Well, I think the point being that if you get it slightly wrong, you can get underneath it, can't you? Or it's a low full toss and you can whack it away as well. So it kind of felt as if it went out of fashion, but it seems to me as if bowlers are using it a bit more. Is that your feeling as well, or not?
I think so, and I think it's partly because it's harder to hit a Yorker for six. You can hit it for four, and batsmen are very good at either with Butler sort of slicing the backward point, or if they go with the straight Yorker, sort of ramping them. But they are harder to hit for six, whereas the length balls have been hit for six, and the short balls have been hit for six with regularity. And there's been quite a controversy about the size of bats, hasn't there, actually, in the IPL, where you've seen some mishits going for six, hitting the splice, and one or two batters have been caught out with bats that contravened the size. So the umpires now have a gauge, which the MCC designed a few years ago. I was part of the committee, actually, that chose that sort of design of it's like a triangle that fits over the bat, and it mustn't exceed a certain width of the edges. And one or two batters in the recent IPL matches have exceeded that. So rather than having all your bats tested in the dressing room, which used to happen, and it was sort of done silently, they realised, I think, that the authorities, that some batters were presenting a bat to the people in the dressing room, which was their number two bat, which was legal. And then they were taking out one, which was even bigger, to actually play in the match. So now the umpires are actually testing them.
Yeah, on the field. Yeah. It's been a real feature.
It's a good move, that, actually. And one or two have been sent away and said, no, you can't use that. Get another one.
I have a question, though. As a manufacturer, why would you make a bat that you can't use in a game? Because it becomes kind of redundant, doesn't it? It's like commercially, it doesn't make commercial sense to me.
Yeah.
Surely, if you're spending all that money on making a bat, and they do cost a lot of money, you would actually make one that's within the rigid framework, or not bigger than is allowed.
You would. I mean, that's a perfectly reasonable point. And whether bats expand slightly, do they?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it could be. It could be that they. Yeah.
In a sort of warm dressing room, whether I don't know, maybe they get a bit thicker. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't make any sense, really. I mean, bat manufacturers, and we mentioned this before, and I noticed Simon Wilde wrote about it, and we got a mention, actually. The podcast got a mention in his Sunday Times column, talking about Mike Kennedy, the guy who makes bats for the company World Class Willow, and a lot of Somerset players use it. Use that manufacturer, and he's worked out a way of compressing more wood into a bat with a very, very big press that he built himself, and so some of these world-class willow bats do have more wood in them, but I'm pretty sure that he makes sure they comply with the regulations.
Yeah, well, it strikes me as being quite a costly mistake if it doesn't. If it is too big. Anyway, I think that's just about it, Yoz. Now we're going to be back a bit later in the week to talk about the history of Test cricket, because Tim Wigmore, journalist, has written a book about it. and I've been reading it. It's a really fascinating book. It goes into so much detail, and so many. What I really love about it is some of the little stories, and we'll try and bring those out when we speak to Tim later in the week. But so we'll be back with another podcast Thursday, Friday time, looking at the history of Test cricket and see what Tim has got to say after having written an enormous tome. I'll put it behind me so you can have a look at it as well for our next podcast. So that's it for today. Thanks very much for listening. Unless you've got anything else to say, Yoz?
Well, I just say, if you like this podcast, don't forget to give us a mention on iTunes. We're nudging up to the top of the table along with Sky Sports and TMS. So, please give us a like and maybe a review as well. We'd love to hear from you. You can post all sorts of places, on Twitter or on Instagram or wherever you like. And the Crickverse, as I said, the blog there will be another piece up there today as well. The Crickverse, Cricverse. And we'll be back later in the week.